welcome to this week's tutorial in Final Cut Pro X, which is a advanced tutorial this week. We're going to be looking at how to colour grade. So the first thing you need to do is open up Final Cut Pro X, and you'll need to download the raw footage from the Student Apps drive. So I can't access that from here to show you, but you should have a storage drive and you should be able to access your kind of storage folder under TV and film. If you're unsure of how to access that, just give me a shout and I'll show you how. So once you've downloaded this colour graded footage, so it's all of these clips here, we're going to have a little play. So I'll just show you, I've put it together into a little kind of scene. Don't worry about this at the moment. Very ominous. So, the first thing you'll need to do, I'm just going to mute that, is download that and edit that scene. Excuse me. So, you're probably wondering what this screen is here popping up. So this is a histogram, which you can open by opening View Video Scopes. So it should be Show Video Scope, something like that there. And we're going to work first in the Luma scope. So if you go to Luma, you should have something like that. Now all of these have already kind of been colour corrected, so I'm going to take those off. I'm going to put them back to their original state. If it'll let me. So you can see there's a subtle difference at the moment, but don't worry too much about that. Okay, and you can see already that some of these clips are looking very blue. So we're going to work with this clip here. So this is my colour corrected version and this is the original. You can see in the original it's already very blue. Most of these clips have kind of this bluish kind of tint to them, so you can see in this one here. So we're going to be taking that out. But the first thing I need to do is explain to you kind of how this Luma video scope works. So I'm just going to make this screen a little bit bigger so that I can explain it to you. So I've got this gradient here, and as you can see on this gradient it goes from black to white. Now if we look at this Luma scope, you can see that it kind of represents this curve. Now you always read a Luma scope or a video scope from left to right like you would with your image. So reading this here, we can see that on the left hand side of the screen, 0 means that it's black. So you can see that that's visually represented here. On the right hand side of the screen you can see that it's fully white. So you can see that it's at 100%. 0 represents that kind of super black, which unfortunately you can't use super black. If your colours are laying on that line, it means they're not broadcast ready. So you may have seen something like this. Bars and tone. Bars and tone are used for correcting colour in broadcast. So if you're intending to put your videos on YouTube, excuse me, you might not necessarily need bars and tone. But if you're creating something for TV, you certainly would need to ensure that your colours are not super black or super white. So super black is represented as 0, super white is represented as 100%, as we've just said. So to ensure that your black colours are legal, you need to ensure that they're between 0 and 33%. So that's around about here somewhere. And that represents shadows in your images. Highlights should be anything above 66% to 100%. And your midtones are kind of somewhere in between. So just to show you how that works, if we go to this colour board, so to add colour correction, you need to go to this image here, and then click and hold and drag colour correction on your image. So in the colour board, if we go to exposure, because we're looking at the luma value, which is the light value, exposure also relates to light value. So if I push this side up, so this is the highlights, you should start to see that there's kind of this white line that goes across the screen. But if I bring the shadows down, you can see that this black line's going across the screen. And that's because we're taking most of the image, most of the luminance value, the light value, we're bringing it all down. And that's why it's moving it along like that. So again, similarly, if I brought the highlights down, you can see that they go down to dark on that side of the screen. And the same if I took this side up as well. So it works the same way with video. So if we take a little look at this image here, you can see that most of the light value is in the centre of the screen. But we can see by looking at this that this water, which is white down here, is kind of represented here. Now it's not full white because actually there's not much of it is going up here to the 100% mark. But we can certainly see that there's more colour and light value here on this side of the screen. Again, if we look at another image here, let's take this face for instance, you can see that there's a lot of data represented here on the left hand side of the screen. And if I was to take the highlights up slightly, you can see that they're moving more towards 100%. You can see that it's starting to look a little bit more energetic, this image. But again, if we're going over, you can start to see it starts to look really overexposed. But that would be illegal anyway for broadcast colours. Oops, crashed it. So about 90%, somewhere like that, is about right. Now again with this she's wearing kind of a black top here. So you could bring that down, but we don't want to bring it down all the way down to 0%. It needs to just sit above that line there. So anything between 0 and 33% is fine. You can see that if we took it right down, you can start to see these colours get crushed at the bottom, but it looks really contrasty. So contrast is kind of like your difference between light and dark. So high contrast means that there's a lot of pixels between the light and dark. So again, if we take that down to about there, you can start to see that this image is looking much more vibrant. And these kind of mid-tones or anything in between. So if you think these mid colours, like on his jumper here, are a little too bright, you could bring those down as well. Or you could take them up. But you can start to see that it looks a little flat if you go too high. Or again, it looks a bit too dark if you go the other way. So that's basic luma correction. But we want to have a look at colour correction as well. So if you go to view, sorry, not view, if you go to this little kind of toolbar here, go to RGB Parade, and that splits this signal into red, green and blue. So using the video scope in the same way you did for the luminance value, we can do the same for the chrominance. So you can see here that there's a lot of blue in this image. You can see that the blue is pushing further up here. If I go to a really blue image to show you, this one here, you can see there's much more colour in the blue, so you might want to take that down slightly. Now saturation wise, you can see there's a lot of colour in the middle there as well. So if we go to saturation, mid-tones are these bits in the middle, so the middle bits. And you might want to kind of even those out slightly as well. Push the shadows down a little and push the highlights up a bit, possibly. Now it's not done a lot at this point, but now if we go to the colour, we want to come away from the blue because we want to take some of this blue out. I've kind of flattened the image a little bit there because I've taken it a bit too far. So we can see that this colour at the top here, which is the skyline, is blue. There's also quite a lot of blue in the middle. So if we go to highlights and just pull it away slightly from the blue, you could probably pull it down below the line. You can start to see some of that blue colour goes down. Now, obviously if you went all the way it would look really ridiculous, but you can start to balance it out slightly like that. And again, if you want to take the mid-tones down slightly, you could do, or you could push them up if you want a bluer colour. Starts to look a little less blue. Now I don't mind having a little bit more blue in the highlight because we want the skyline to look blue. And there you go. So you can see that it's kind of corrected the colour a little bit there. And of course you can go back and you can change your luminance again if you feel you need to. So we could perhaps push the highlights up a little again if we wanted to. You start to see it looks much better than it did originally. So these kind of mid-tones allow you to play around with mood a little bit. So if you wanted to, you could kind of add, lots of different effects to that. Just going to undo that, but allows you to kind of play around a little bit with it. But if I show you the original, you can see there's a big difference in colour there. It's much less blue. The colour looks much more even, and it does just look like a better piece of photography, I think. So again here, you can select your image, add colour differences and your exposure and even it out. But then if you want to have a play with it, you just take your mid-tones. If you want something a little bit kind of purpley perhaps, or just pull it towards the angle you wanna go towards. Creates kind of a bit of a moody image. But have a little play with that. Of course, the best colour correction is when all the colours are even at first. So if you can get all of your images even and then add an effect over the top, it's much more effective. So we can see that's looking a little bit yellow actually, so you might want to take some of it down a bit, but have a play. And that's it. And that's colour correction.